Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, January 30th. We had a lot of ThursdAIs this January. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist here with Weights and Biases, and I'm very, very, very energetic and excited today to bring you ThursdAI, our weekly AI show that's recorded live on X, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, everywhere that you can possibly see us. So thank you, everyone who's joining throughout all of these different platforms as we record live. The show is also then turns into a newsletter and a podcast that you can catch everywhere you get your podcasts. With me today, my co-host Wolfram. Welcome back, Wolfram.
Hello, I'm glad to be here again. I missed the last episode, so really happy to be here with all the news. All the stuff.
You missed it, but you met with some of our community as well, which is great.
Yes, in Cologne. That was
Cologne,
a German
yes.
AI developer meeting. It was great. We had people, someone even came from France
Oh, wow.
to us because of the show, because of the podcast, because we mentioned it.
Were you
And-
able to talk about anything else besides DeepSeek, is my question.
At that moment, it wasn't even the big news there yet.
Really?
It was more about operator, agent, and stuff like that. So,
Interesting.
so the big news happened a bit later, I think.
Yeah, that was like Thursday, and then we talked about R1 on our show last week. You weren't here, but you guys already covered this as well. It came out, we just talked about this, and then the whole weekend and until now, there's so much DeepSeek in the news that we have to at least, we're going to do a meta-analysis. We're not going to talk about what they talked about. We're going to talk about the meta-analysis. Nistan, go ahead.
We had a whole hype session about it in November. I was watching the November 20th or 12th show.
Yes.
And Dump was in it, and R1 preview had come out. And we all got excited and stuff, and then just like forgot about it. And didn't expect that to completely blow up after.
Absolutely. We covered DeepSeek R1. Back then, it was R1 preview. It only came out as DeepThink in the interface, and then they didn't launch anything. We always knew that DeepSeek is coming. They told us, we're going to release this. And then they released it. We were very happy. Ta-da! New reasoning model, state of the art. And then the world lost its goddamn mind with DeepSeek. It's incredible. My mom knows about this. Like, grandmas know about DeepSeek.
Mine too.
It's number one. Yeah, exactly. It's number one on the App Store. It's everywhere. Our AI czar for United States talks about distillation in a not exactly completely correct way. There's so much about DeepSeek this week that we're not going to cover like what happened this week with DeepSeek. We're going to do like a meta-analysis, what like people thought and some reactions. NVIDIA commented back and Microsoft commented back. There's the special on OpenAI now to release some stuff. So we're going to have some breaking news this week. But not only DeepSeek. So DeepSeek was definitely another week highlight of the news. So like rarely do we have an occurrence like this where something comes out. And folks, remember, we cover week to week. We're a weekly show. We cover pretty much basically only news in the span of the week. I have a bunch of people who tell me, hey, Alex, I want to come on the podcast. And I was like, okay, what did you do this week? I'm sorry that I sound like Elon, but what did you do this week? Because if it's not this week, then there's other shows for you. Rarely do we have an occurrence such as DeepSeek R1 that we can talk about from week to week afterwards. Very rarely. And DeepSeek has taken more of the airways this week than last week, I feel like, even though, so it's been crazy. But besides DeepSeek, there's just so much that happened this week. On top of this news, and in addition, there's a bunch of reasoning stuff we should definitely cover. So let's just dive in. Folks, let's dive in. I want to hear from the folks who we now have a bunch of folks in the studio right now with us in Twitter Spaces, live on the video as well. So if you're just stepping in, please go to the bottom and tell us if your mom knows about DeepSeek. I want to know. My mom knows about DeepSeek. Wolfram moms knows about DeepSeek. And tell us if your grandma knows about DeepSeek. It's very interesting. Or if your parents to kids of 13 and up, do they know? Because it absolutely broke through the AI kind of bubble area, which is very interesting. Meanwhile, I will also say, if you have other news that you're excited about, please tell us, because I definitely have a bunch of news that I'm very excited about. And for that reason, we'll do a TLDR. As we always do for folks who are new to the show, we basically run through super quick about maybe 10 to 15 minutes about everything that we saw that happened this week. This serves two purposes. One of them, if you don't have the 2 hours to sit with us as we're here for at least 2 hours. Lately, it's been crazier and crazier. It's been harder and harder to not be here for longer. As you sit with us, if you don't have that time, you can just absorb the TLDR, know everything that happened, and then our commentary about this, you can follow up later. Another one is we often don't get to talk about the things we want to talk about because there's breaking news. For example, today, we already have some breaking news from Mistral. We already have some breaking news from Refusion. But also, I'm pretty sure we're going to have breaking news today from OpenAI. I don't have prior knowledge, folks, even though OpenAI was advisors, we work together. I don't have prior knowledge, to be very clear with you, about a specific date. I just saw that some influencers that are not me, that did get some embargo, broke that embargo, right? If I have an embargo, I won't tell you about it. Trust me, I will try not to screw this up. However, we have a bunch of other stuff. So let's run through the TLDR, as we always do. And I think it's a very dense piece of commentary right now. So let's run, because there's a lot to talk about besides DeepSeek. Obviously, we're going to cover DeepSeek, crashing the stock market, reactions, Dario Amode's reaction, Sam Altman, Microsoft, like all these reactions we're going to talk about. On the wave of reasoning in DeepSeek, a bunch of stuff came out. One interesting thing is this open thoughts reasoning data set. So folks started saying, hey, it's great that we have this like state-of-the-art reasoning model, but we need more chain of thought data sets. And so these folks released on open thoughts, a large-scale reasoning data set. It's 114,000 distilled versions of chain of thought like reasoning, I would say, connections, or I don't know, traces. And we're going to cover this a little bit. We're now in the open source LLMs kind of TLDR. We also just have breaking news from just today from our friends at Mistral. Finally coming back to us, understanding that, hey, maybe one of the reasons why the world jumped on DeepSeek is open source. And Mistral has not been releasing open source lately. And you guys know we love the Mistral friends. And finally, we got some open source from Mistral. Mistral today releases Mistral Small 2501, which is a 24 billion parameter model that gets like 81% on MMLU. It fits neatly in the 4090 or a 32 gigabyte Mac. Great model looks. And finally, for the happiness of all of us, they finally understood that not mentioning Qwen in their evals is in the community. They're going to get the goose. You guys know the goose meme? It was like, where's Qwen? Where's Qwen? Finally, they add Qwen 2.5 in their evals as well. So thank you, Mistral, for listening to the community and understanding that we need this comparison. We're going to do it anyway. Might as well put it in there. But congrats on Mistral. It's an Apache 2 license that you can download finally from Mistral. Very happy about this. We also had 2 replications that I could follow of R10. Something we didn't mention super quick last week is that R1, DeepSeek R1 released basically 2 main models, R1 and R10. And the difference between was R1 was trained with human chains of thoughts as well. R10 was almost entirely RL and almost entirely synthetic, as far as I understand. And so we had 2 replications, one from Berkeley, one from Rajan. Rajan is a reproduction from some folks who were at DeepSeek before, actually. And they both try to reproduce R10. And Berkeley is called Tiny Zero. And they claim that they reproduce it for $30. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. They didn't reproduce fully, but they claim that you can get that aha moment. If you guys remember, we talked about DeepSeek getting that aha moment where the model starts reasoning and like researchers like, whoa, holy shit, it's reasoning. So they claim that you can get to this aha moment with under $30, which is incredible. And Rajan is also another repro of R10. They claim to be the first. And testing on Jim Sokoban. So like very small, I don't believe they even release models. But Berkeley's one, they released the weights and biases logs, which I love. You can peruse them. So we're going to take a look at them. Anything else in open source that I missed? Wolfram, Nistan, folks in the audience, anything else in open source that's important for us to cover?
I think that covers it.
Yes, there is. There's a big news. It's Tulu 405B.
That's right. From our friends at Allen AI, we have another huge model, just like literally breaking news from today. I just like barely saw it. Tulu 405B. Do we know anything, Justin? What are the stats? Do we know? What do we know?
It looked really good on the benchmarks. And the thing about Tulu is that you can apply it to anything you're doing, any model because they are actually fully open. The data, even the code, I think, the logs. Yeah, I'll post some stuff as I find more. I don't want to say anything.
And also, Nistan, coming to the actual studio.
Yes.
We need to hear you and see you as well.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So yeah, Tulu 405B from our friends at Allen Institute for AI. And as always, the stuff that Allen Institute does is always completely open. And it's great. In training this model to 405B, I'm assuming that's not an MOE, so it's like a dense 405B model. This could be a fine-tune of Llama. Yeah, we'll take a look. So definitely breaking news in there. This is all in open source. Folks, we have a new category called agents. It's about time. 2025 is going to be the year of agents. And so far, agents, I didn't give them a specific area. But now we have a specific area. It's called agents. So let's talk about what's new in agents this week. There's two things. First of all, operator. If you guys remember last week, Wolfram, you weren't here, but we watched the operator news live on the show. As they happened, like we were speculating, is operator going to come? OpenAI launched operator, their agents, and we tuned in live, and that's why the show last time took so long. And then we watched it, and then I hit that button of $200 immediately, and I spent the $200 for you guys, and I played with operator the whole week, so I have a bunch of thoughts about it. And I also built like a macOS app for it. I have a bunch of thoughts about operator. So we're going to talk about them. But also in the news of agents, Blocks with Jack Dorsey's company also released an open source agent called Project Goose. And it's a framework, but also an app that you can run, and it has extensions, and you can tune in. You can use any other kind of via Open Router. You can use pretty much anything. You can use Ollama. You can use GPT-4. You can use like a bunch of models if you have the API keys. They have extensions. It's pretty cool. Does not work as well as you might imagine. Like conceptually, it's cool. So we're going to talk about Goose in the world of agents. Folks, the world of agents is moving like super, super fast. I will say, if you're following the worlds of agents closer than I am, please drop in the chat everything that happened in the world of agents that I may have missed. Those are the two main things for me, but I know for a fact that the agent world moves sometimes as fast as the rest of the world. So please drop anything that happened in the world of agents in the comments, so we'll be able to cover this. Moving on to big companies, LLMs, and APIs, which is like also a big thing. The reason why, open source. We missed one big thing, one huge thing. Okay, we're going to cover this because this is open source LLMs. We also have a vision and video category where we also cover open source. And another thing that happened in open source this week was DeepSeek dropping Janus Pro. So not only did they drop like a model that changed the world, and grandmas know about this and is #1 on the App Store, DeepSeek also dropped Janus. Janus is very interesting, very interesting. It's a model that generates images, so like a diffusion model, but also understands images. So it's like a duality model that understands, I don't know why, fireworks are flying behind me on the video stream, folks, it's very funny. But DeepSeek just released also a state-of-the-art model, state-of-the-art among the models that can understand and generate images. It's very interesting that they released this. It's Janus Pro, so they already released Janus before. This is Janus Pro. Also in Vision Video, also in open source, and also something we covered last week that they yanked it. NVIDIA brings back Eagle 2. Eagle 2 is a high-resolution multimodal understanding model from NVIDIA, and last week we tried to cover it, and the models were yanked, and so we didn't end up, but Eagle 2 is back. So they re-released it, so we didn't get the Wizard LM treatment. And now we have Eagle 2, which is great. And it looks like we got 3 state-of-the-art vision models because Qwen 2.5V, if you guys remember, Qwen 2VL was one of the top vision models in the open source. Qwen decided to give us a Chinese New Year present in the form of Qwen 2.5VL, which is a vision model from Qwen based on the Qwen 2.5. They claim state-of-the-art OSS vision. As well. And in vision and video, we also have 2 video models. Pika updated one, and Helio released a director model. You can actually tell it what to do. So those are the open source. I think we covered everything in open source.
Wasn't there another video generation model that was released?
Yes, but not an open source.
There's more.
Yeah, thank you. Which one? Listen. Yeah,
there is 1 million context models from Qwen, and also Qwen 2.5, the 72B multimodal one, which people already started using as an operator, as an open source operator.
Qwen 2.5 VL, right?
2.5 VL, but also the 1 million context models.
That's not open source.
No, they are fully open source.
Yeah, interesting.
They're on Hugging Face. I already started using them. I was going to post some stuff. Actually, we're trying to deploy and get enough compute.
All right, Nisa, we're in the TLDR. We're going to cover them once we go to the actual full coverage, and we're going to cover them. Big companies, LLMs, this is our next kind of like TLDR section. Alibaba Qwen, the folks from Qwen, not only dropping open source models, they also dropped Qwen 2.5 Max, which is their kind of like main reason there. If you go to their chat, you can play with their model. This model comes close to GPT-4 and beats GPT-4. I think it's also available in the API. A great model overall with like very good performance. 87 in MMU, 69 in MMU Pro. Very good model, very powerful model. However, The one thing that's interesting to me is that they also dropped a video model that nobody talked about. You can generate video on Qwen now, folks. They didn't say anything. Nobody knows about this. They didn't announce. There's no announcement. But you can generate images and video, and those look good. Very good. Very close to state of the art. Shout out to our friends Jun Yang and Baiwan and like other folks from Alibaba Qwen. They're usually here on the show. However, I will say they are on their very well-deserved rest right now, so they're not on with us on the show. But yeah, Qwen dropped a lot of stuff before the Chinese New Year. Also in the big companies and APIs, there was an earnings call from Meta where Zach talked about multiple things that are interesting to our crowd, including the fact that Llama 4 and is going to come as a mini. So it's going to be Llama 4 and Llama 4 mini. Very interesting because they usually just release like smaller models, right? But now they actually have a new name for this. We got Llama in smaller models, but now we have Llama 4 mini. Not only that, he mentioned that there will be a reasoning model for Llama, which makes sense because, well, as part of the, we're going to talk about the reactions to DeepSeek, but as part of the reactions, there was this like famous blind post of somebody that works at Meta claiming that there are executives in Meta that get paid more than what DeepSeek was trained for, which probably an exaggeration, but it was like a very funny thread. Zach is talking about Mini and talks about how open source is very important. And I heard also rumors that they're going to implement DeepSeek inside Meta. So that's very interesting. As we said, OpenAI is likely about to launch O3 Mini today, according to some influencers that broke embargo. We don't know anything before, but yes, this is going to be very exciting. And we're going to talk about this O3 Mini once it launches. And also, we potentially going to get some new Gemini 2.0 news soon. It's been leaked. But also Grok 3 is starting to show up to some people. Nistan, Wolfram, like we had folks in our chat that talked about the Grok 3 showing up for them. So we don't know anything, but we know it's coming. We know it's coming. And we know that potentially there's going to be a reasoning model for Grok as well. Somehow we also know this. So reasoning is all around. Anything else in big companies that I missed?
I posted something in the chat. It's not a model, but it's a Llama stack for Meta. That sounds very interesting. To compose an application on all. Yeah.
Llama's like an OS so that you can like run a bunch of stuff. Like it's a whole get started with Llama's things. They released like an update to that.
Integrated environment in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very interesting.
And that is an open source, actually. So we can cover this in open source. Anything else in speculation? We don't usually do speculation. We can skip. Let's see what else. Ooh, yes, in this week's Buzz. This week's Buzz. So last week we talked about how Weights and Biases got state-of-the-art in SweBench Verified with our WNB programmer agent. This week I can tell you that Sean Lewis, the CTO, went on Latent Space podcast with our friend Swix, and they actually talked about how they achieved this. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. I will also tell you that, again, if we're talking about Swix, our friend, AI Engineer Conference Summit is coming up in New York, and I'm going to be there. Weights and Biases is going to sponsor this. We just closed the deal, and I'm going to be there together with the whole team. So if you're coming to AI Engineer, which you should, if you don't have tickets yet, I think they sold out, but don't trust me. Go to AI.engineer and check it out. I think there's maybe one more ticket. A day after this, though, me and another friend here, the Canadian friend over here that sits with me here, we're going to meet up because I'm coming to Toronto, folks, for the first time since I started my AI journey for the AI Tinkerers. So if you're in Toronto, we know there's a bunch of people. AI Thinkers in Toronto, there's 800 people signing up for each event. We're going to do 2 workshops about evaluation. So if you're in Toronto, you're listening to this, go sign up to AI Thinkers. You're going to get an email very soon. We're going to come and do some workshops. Nistan is going to be there probably also. He doesn't know about this yet, but Nistan, you're invited.
You picked literally like the coldest time where your eyelashes like freeze outside.
I'll bring
to come visit. Yeah.
I'll bring all my layers, folks. All my layers. So hopefully in the University of Toronto is going to be auditorium. We're going to talk about Eva. It's going to be awesome. I think we're still in the TLDR, folks, because there's still like a bunch of stuff that happened. Voice and audio categories popping up because we finally have open source SUNO, folks. It's crazy. I don't know if you heard about this, but UE 7B is a 7 billion parameter model that comes fairly close to SUNO and Udio and Refusion, which is a new one. And you can generate full songs. It's non-commercial, but it runs. It's a 7B model. It takes a while But at the end of this, you get like a nice sounding songs. I think it's the highest quality that I heard in open source. Absolutely highest quality that I heard in open source. So OpenSUNO, we'll just call this OpenSUNO for now. OpenSUNO from HKUST, HK University, and Art Projection, Multimodal Art Projection. Those are the release this. But also we have a new contender for the music generator of the year. It's called Refusion with Fuzz, and that one is free until their GPU burn out. So if you want to generate music for free, you don't want to pay SUNO or Udio, go to Refusion. They just released it today. I think also breaking news. But we're obviously more excited about the open source one. And nothing in AI art and diffusion this week, probably. But there's another category called tools. And because everybody is now integrating R1 into the reasoning, I don't know why they didn't do this with O1, because the API was there. Oh, no.
It's pricey.
Yes, first of all, it's pricey. Second of all, it wasn't there. One API was only available to like tier 5 and tier 4. And DeepSeek is now, so everybody's integrating DeepSeek, basically. And not only that, because it's not in, their whole point is like DeepSeek runs on our servers and not in China. Perplexity with R1 is really good. My Perplexity like subscription lapsed this week. Without me noticing, I probably would have canceled it, honestly, between us friends. But it lapsed, and I was like, okay, fine. Another year with Perplexity Pro. This time I actually paid for it. But they added R1 reasoning, and it's really good. You have to drop down EXA, which is a search API that kind of like you can use for your agents. Also added DeepSeek chat as well, and it also does deep research for you. And also Crea, our friends from Crea AI, also added DeepSeek. So everybody's adding reasoning now because it's possible. So this is in tools. I think that this is our TLDR, folks. I think let's actually start talking about the stuff, right? Including... Oh, yeah. Somebody mentioned this, and I want to add this as well in agents. Browser use is a alternative to operator. So we'll add this to agents. Browser use is an open source browser use. Thank you, Quentin. Browser use is an open source alternative to agents and operators specifically that you can run, and you can change different LLM providers. And as we know now, that Nissan just mentioned, Qwen 2.5 VL is agentic to an extent as well. And Llama is going to be agentic as well. So we're going to have agents and reasoning agents and all kinds of things on the show. So with this, I think, after quite a while of an intro, it's getting longer and longer to the TLDR. If there's not anything else, folks, in the audience, and if there is, please tell us about this. Let's get to open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. Welcome to the open source segment of ThursdAI. We're going to talk about LLMs mostly. We have to start with DeepSeek, folks. We have to start with DeepSeek because it's been everywhere on the news this week. And not necessarily from the way we cover DeepSeek, which is, hey, there's this reasoning model. It's test time compute. And it's like this on AIME score and blah, blah, blah. DeepSeek was everywhere this week, not because it was open source. It was because they also released an iOS app that started getting #1 in different app stores, but also because when it released, one of the things that was supposedly true is that it was trained with around $5.5 million, which completely threw in disarray the whole discourse about what it means to release models, what it means about open source, what it means when Meta has 5 executives that together get paid a year more than like it used to train DeepSeek, and they're spending billions of dollars on infrastructure, and why. This caused a panic market. NVIDIA market crashed a little bit by 17%. I found this very interesting stat that NVIDIA crashed by 5 Intels. So in one day, NVIDIA lost 5 Intels worth of like market share. They gained it back. Let's talk about this just briefly. Like, do we subscribe to this doomerism approach of DeepSeek release means less GPUs, folks? I doubt that we are like, we're not Mr. Market, but I want to hear from you, Wolfram.
They would have crashed much more if people really believed that. I think the people who are investing in NVIDIA know that now you have a model that needs less, but then you can run more of it. And I think that is what made DeepSeek so popular for everybody, because it was in the news because of the stock market crash. Not because it's such a big model, but the outcome it achieved. And then everybody heard about it, and then they went curious about it and got the app, and it went through the roof that way. But I don't think NVIDIA is endangered or anything like that. And yeah, you need GPUs. And if you have the GPUs, you can run DeepSeek even better. So, of course, I think people have realized that by now.
Yeah, Nistan, what's your take on this whole like public market insanity for a few days?
I think there were a lot of other things at play in the market, and this just set off the avalanche.
Probably.
A little bit. Remember, at the end of the day, the market's always smarter than you because it is like the collective latent space, and it does tend to make better decisions than most people, even though you might not initially agree. Now, we can interpret that in many ways, and we can say, yes, there's going to be an increase for a lot more GPU usage. At the same time, DeepSeek runs pretty fast on CPUs, and this is the best model. So I think it was more of a, emotional reaction and an avalanche of ideas that a lot of the companies which were overfinanced and overcapitalized should not have been. And yeah, but the thing is that the next day it picked back up. So it's not financial advice. It's just the market just goes up and down. That's what it is.
Some of us were able to top up some NVIDIA on a discount. That's all I'm saying. I will comment on this quickly and say that, yes, open source. It's open source that is coming very close to bidding on multiple things from China, which is very interesting. The app is free. ChatGPT, even if you want to pay a little bit, the app is very simple and free. There's definitely some consideration of market manipulation, at least in people, whether or not this app was pushed. I haven't seen any, but I saw multiple conversations about this on X, whether or not this was manipulation. Suffice it to say, it got all the way to White House. I heard the president commenting on this. His AI czar is talking about distillation. There was news that OpenAI found evidence that DeepSeek accessed and used O1 for train. Two things about this. One of them is OpenAI does not expose reasoning traces. So whatever happened, probably happened on GPT-4. But also, let's be very frank, OpenAI trained their models on the public internet pretty much. And coming out and saying this like comment, this is not my personal take. I don't care. Take my information, train on it. Let's get better LLMs for all. But some people are like raising their eyebrow and saying, hey, you cannot like train on the public internet and then cry about it when people train on some of the stuff that you trained on. So it was a very interesting reaction to OpenAI. There's also public reactions like Dario Amodei's, the CEO of Anthropic blog, where he talked about the increasing need in chip exports restrictions, because he basically said that it's incredible what DeepSeek was able to achieve. He also talked about the fact that while the numbers are potentially true, it doesn't mean that this is the whole number. So DeepSeek also spent some money training DeepSeek V3 on top of R1, like R1 is related as well. So that kind of pricing didn't go into there. They also shared some very interesting highlights, finally, from Anthropic that we haven't talked about, that Claude Sonnet 3.5 was trained with tens of millions of dollars, billions, not hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars. They also shared that Claude Sonnet was not a distillation of a bigger model, of a reasoning model. So we got some actually information finally from folks, because DeepSeek kind of shake the industry. So a bunch of like public reactions as well. Very interesting. So after OpenAI mentioned that they have found evidence of distillation, evidence of traces being used from DeepSeek, Microsoft, a day after this, added DeepSeek to Azure, which is a very interesting comparison of things. There's a selfie of Sam Altman and Satya Nadella talking about, you guys are not ready for Microsoft and OpenAI's like next chapter. And like a day afterwards, Microsoft, ta-da, DeepSeek R1 is now on Azure. It was really just comical almost consequence. What else do we have about DeepSeek?
Having an open source model is a very libertarian free market thing to do. It actually benefits the whole economy quite a lot. And it's very unfortunate to see that the reaction from two of the top players is, just build the great firewall of America, bro. Like that's going to help things. It's not. The only thing they can do now, because the public knows they can run very good intelligence privately and have control over it. So the only thing they can do is actually open source some, get some engagement, get a lot more people using them, and just stop trying to build a spy apparatus to just suck everybody's data back to your server. See, the public has realized it, so it's too late. Again, this is my opinion, my take as some dude in Canada on this. So this is not a
let me add to
advice
this
or anything, but remember, the Chinese government, the CCP, the reason that they allowed them to get away with deregulation, they didn't have to open source it or anything, but the reason that they did is because at the end of the day, the interoperability of it, which is something that Zuckerberg has been saying, like the interoperability that it enables, like the graph theoretic benefit of the techno-capital machine, as some people like to say, that is immensely beneficial. And it's not beneficial to an oligarchy of like only top 2 players and stuff, but it is very beneficial to an ecosystem. And that's why they've allowed that, because at the end of the day, it just brings them economic benefits and brings them better relationships with everybody else. And what we're suggesting from companies here, instead of them actually contributing to get, I don't know, why are they not getting open source medical models to literally everyone so that they can just run them privately? You can do that. Just make one for that. Instead, now the whole world is going to be using Chinese models because you tried to do it in a bad faith way, where you were trying to do carrot and the stick and trying to suck all the information in and block all the other players and try to pass laws to literally put open source developers in jail. And now you're losing. So there's, what it is. That's my take on it. Like, you're always going to be second place with that mentality.
There were also like all of this outcry about DeepSeek being Chinese, etc. So there's 2 things that I want to say about this. First of all,
anything.
No, but you mean like, I specifically talk about like the clutching of the pearls regarding the information of yours that goes to China. First of all, DeepSeek R1 is the model. DeepSeek, the iOS app, yes, they send information to the servers in China and they collect blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't use that. Just don't. Just download. There's also multiple places now that host DeepSeek directly because they open the source. So, for example, Together, Fireworks, Grok, folks from Grok added DeepSeek. They didn't add the full DeepSeek. I'm waiting for the full one. But they added DeepSeek Distill from Llama 70B, and that runs at 300 tokens a second. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about how the LPUs and the TPUs of the world are going to be beneficial for reasoning. We can see this. OpenAI, if there's anything that like OpenAI doesn't have LPUs and TPUs, OpenAI runs on GPUs from NVIDIA. And so they have O3 Mini that's going to come at some point very soon, hopefully today. But we talked about how these like new approaches to specific GPUs are going to get beneficial additions from reasoning models, because reasoning models, the longer they think, the better they are. And if you condense down the thinking into 300 tokens per second, you can see much better impressive results for smaller models. And seeing Seek 1 Distill running at 300 tokens per second on Grok is just incredible, because you get like the reasoning, like poof, it just happens. Gemini thinking as well. Listen, we talked about this briefly last week, how good this is. It keeps getting very good. I think that like people are just missing completely the fact that yes, DeepSeek is cheap and fast. Their API is no longer, by the way, cheap or fast. Like their API does not work right now. They're claiming to have attacks, but the DeepSeek API does not work for me. You have to go through American folks. So many are including DeepSeek in their open source, including Azure right now. So you can actually use DeepSeek without the clutching of the pearls. Oh, it goes to China. That's it. That's done. However, most noobs and most grandmas will not run DeepSeek on their platforms. So the iOS app being number one definitely means that people are willing to give up their information to DeepSeek, etc. And also, 2 vulnerabilities were found in their services, including one completely open ClickHouse database, completely open, left in the open. So like people could have accessed all of your chats. So if you care about your privacy, do not use the app. Just go somewhere else. Many people are already implementing DeepSeek. I think we've covered DeepSeek enough, folks. Like comments, please give us comments as well. But I think we've covered DeepSeek enough again, compared to the fact that we talked about DeepSeek for an hour last week. So if you want the technical details about the R1 models, listen to our show from last week. We covered end to end, including all of the open source stuff. But meanwhile, let's move forward in the open source. Because the next thing that's very important for us to chat about is a new model from Mistral. Yes. Mistral AI, the French company, our friends who gave us once the best open source model to fine tune, Mistral 7B, and then Mistral, and then a bunch of Pixtrals, and a bunch of coattails, and like Mistrals. There's like they play with this naming all the time. They brought us Mistral Small to 2501. It's a 24 billion parameter model that has a very high score in MMLU Pro. 81% accuracy on MMLU, but very high score in MMLU Pro. It's a model that can fit on a single 4090, or a distilled version of this runs on the Mac. So almost like quite possibly the perfect size. It's smaller than a 32B from Qwen 2.5, for example, and it gives a very good result compared to like GPT-4. So almost a perfect model. It's not a reasoning model yet. And they mentioned this. I want to say, reasoning is going to be everywhere. Arthur Mensch, the CEO of Mistral, mentioned it's not the reasoning yet. So Mistral is also working on reasoning. We can assume at this point, I think, folks, let's call this. Every company is working on reasoning models. If they're not about to release one already, they're working on one. So whether it's Grok is going to have reasoning, Llama 3 was confirmed by Zach is going to have reasoning, Llama 4, sorry. Mistral now confirmed they're going to have reasoning. Gemini already have Gemini thinking, and that's great. So pretty much reasoning all around, like we predicted back in December. 2025 is the year of agents, the year of reasoning as well, and probably reasoning agents. Nistan, Mistral Apache 2 license model, finally. Tell us what you think. And also, Wolfram, I want to hear from you because I know you're excited about this one.
I think social pressure works.
Yes.
When they released the newer Mistral model, I went online. Okay, I can't even use this. It's going to take me over a day. And then I was just able to do like a yarn extension of the Qwen Coder 32, and it worked up until 200K. So the approach that they were taking as a company to start locking everything down and reducing the interoperability just like wasn't working, because people just stopped building with their models. And I still use Mistral Large to do long context summarization. I just don't integrate it into anything else I'm doing. It's just for me personally, but that it makes it, the licensing makes it very hard. So anyway, a lot of people gave them, like myself, gave them a lot of smack for turning the page into a used car salesman portal and not having. So now they came back and they're like, okay, here you go. It's Apache 2 license. We released it.
We're very happy with this. So shout out to Mistral, finally giving us back Apache 2 license model. The commitment to open source is palpable. Not only that, I want to highlight this one thing that we also called out. The community called this out. Mistral did not like adding Qwen to their evals for some reasons. There's reasons, I think. Finally, we're getting comparisons to Qwen 2.5. I think maybe now it's because they're beating Qwen 2.5, at least coming very close, but in smaller form factor. So it's beneficial to show this off. But also, I think that, folks, this has been like Chinese models that we've reported on Qwen, on DeepSeek. Everybody's waking up just now. We've been talking about DeepSeek for a year. We've been talking about Qwen for more than a year. Jun Yang is a co-host of the show. He joins all the time. We know that Chinese open source absolutely destroys like everybody else until Llama comes out, and that holds for a few weeks. And then they also catch up. And this kind of unease with Chinese open source from folks not even comparing to them is we're done with this. We're done with this. We know that if R1 comes out and is like the best model possible, you have to put up every model, doesn't matter where it comes from, in your evals, and to show that you're better. And so very happy that Mistral finally acknowledged this, and then they have Qwen 2.5 in those performance comparisons. I found this very funny. One of the ways that Mistral eval was landed for Mistral Small is human evaluated benchmarks. They didn't say which benchmark. They only said we use the third party to evaluate, maybe artificial analysis, maybe something else. And they basically posted a chart that says the categories are not like MMLU Pro, human eval, like the stuff we're used to. The category is Mistral is better, Mistral is slightly better, other is slightly better, or other is better. They basically get like a grid. So I found this chart hilarious because I tried to read this, not necessarily understood. So they compared Mistral 24B, Mistral Small, to Gemma 2, to Qwen 2.5 32B, to Llama 3.3 70B, and GPT-4o. So you can see in this chart that Mistral, I don't know. This chart is super confusing to me, folks. I don't know. It says Mistral is better 0.1 0.19% of the time against Llama 70B, but also Llama is better 0.2%. It's a confusing chart. So I don't know what they try to do with this, but we need better comparisons on numbers. It has function calling. It has a bunch of stuff for local inference. So that's good. Wolfram, what's your take on Mistral? You're probably going to have time to download this one.
Not yet, but definitely today, because I've been waiting for this. Last year there were a lot of releases, but Mistral, they were completely quiet, and I really missed them because they are the only European player in the open source scene that actually matters. And it's always great. I still see the 8x7B in production in a lot of use cases. So having a new model that is better and at a good form factor size, that is very important. And I'm really happy that it is Apache 2 licensed as well. So I think, especially in Europe, this will be a very big release. And it does the European languages extremely well, and most probably better than the Chinese models, which is a big factor here.
Yep. I think that it's very important for European purposes as well. I agree with you. Multimodality is always, we're going to wait and hear from you how this model performs, and going to be very excited to see your evals as well. So folks, definitely give Wolfram a follow. Wolfram is our resident evaluate person. He has released a bunch of benchmarks. We also compared some of the R1 stuff that you released last week. We added to the show. So this is Mistral. Let's talk about the two replications of R10 that come, one from Berkeley and one from previous folks that came from DeepSeek. I mentioned this briefly in the TLDR. Also, a shout out super quick to folks who just joined us. We're also on video. If you go to the top of the space on X, and that tweet from WNB Weave, thank you for hosting us. Our show is also on YouTube, but also on WNB Weave account. So give that a follow as well while you're there. So back to our talk about open source. Berkeley released Tiny Zero. It's a reproduction of R10 for $30. And then Ragen was released by folks who also previously worked at DeepSeek. And both of them tried to replicate this next thing where DeepSeek trained and gave us two models. There was R1 and R10. And the difference between R1 and R10 is that R10 is completely RL and completely, I think, synthetic. And both of these replications tried in the open source to replicate this. There's also an attempt to replicate a fully R1 replication from Hugging Face that we're waiting on. So very interesting things for you to check out if you want to see how we get to this aha reasoning moment. Berkeley Tiny Zero released also weights and biases logs, complete logs from weights and biases, and those are fun to see always. So shout out. If you release weights and biases logs, you know I'm going to shout you out, as always. Tulu from LNEI, for example, just released, they used to release weights and biases logs. So they got to a point where with the chain of thought training, they were able to get to this aha moment where the model starts to reason, which is what the paper talked about and what was very exciting. Anything for us? No, let's skip. We have a bunch of other stuff to talk about. Let's actually cover Tulu. Nistan, let's look at what we have from Tulu. Tulu from LNEI, a 405B Tulu, which is a fine-tune, somebody confirmed in the comments, from Llama 405B, was released. What do we know about Tulu at this point already? Let's take a look.
Apparently it's beating DeepSeek v3 on the benchmarks, which is, so again, for people, because there's R10, R1, V3, all of the DeepSeek models, starting from a mixture of experts architecture, and that just means that the model can sit on a lot of RAM, but it's only using a small part of it. But the architecture between V2, so if you heard DeepSeek Coder version 2 or DeepSeek 2.5 or DeepSeek V3, which we've been covering for the last year or so, those are all this new, much more evolutionary architecture, which keeps a pool of expert weights and then picks and places from that pool layer per layer. And this is what we'd consider like a second gen architecture. Whereas the Mistral 8x7B was like the first Grok that Elon released, which was like the gigantic file one. That's more of a first generation architecture because that just has for each layer only a small pool that they only pick two from. So now with the newer model, the V3, they built up. So the newer DeepSeek R1 is just a reinforcement learning fine tune of basically DeepSeek V3. So that's the base. And that's also so that's the base which all these models are built on. And that's what Tulu 405B is comparing it to. So Tulu 405B also managed to beat the base of this. Now, some people are saying that this
To be
is
DeepSeek V3 base. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, the V3 base, but using some of the same techniques. And the reason that we really like Tulu is because it's completely open and they show everything that they do, and this benefits massively the community as well. Yeah. And it also brings them back. Those connections end up making them better at making models too.
Yeah. So shout out to LNAI for like open sourcing pretty much everything, including checkpoints, usually including everything. The one highlight for me is that this RLVR training method, they call reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards method. This seems to be like holding on and very well, even in larger sizes. So shout out to Tulu about this. Anything else that we want to add about this, or we're skipping towards vision models because we have a bunch of stuff to talk about vision models as well.
It's just going to be a bit expensive to run, but
yeah,
I'm looking forward to doing some data gen.
So let's talk about open source in the vision category as well, because like we usually split, but I doubt that there's a need to split. Sometimes there's a very stark comparison. I will show that the thing that we have now to cover in the open source is DeepSeek released Janus Pro in the beginning of this week. Janus is a very interesting model. Janus is a state-of-the-art model that understands images and generates images. If you guys remember, a long time ago, Greg Brockman posted this image of a person writing on a blackboard, and the writings were like looking like a chalkboard. And then they basically said that GPT-4 can generate images natively, not via DALL-E integration. And this never came. We never saw any of this ever again, but it looks like super, super cool. This model is basically that. This model understands and generates images together. So it's like a combined architecture. And compared to models that, it's not the first model that does this, but compared to other models that do this, this one does this very well. And so we can take a look. The architecture uses Siglip and then uses LlamaGen for generation. It beats, I think it's a 7 billion parameter model, and it beats, there's two models, 1.5B and 7B. It beats SDXL, at least on the low resolution images it generates. So this model that is MIT licensed, by the way, shout out to DeepSeek. This model that was trained on like Lava, etc., it beats like DALL-E 3 and Lava. Do you guys remember Lava, the llama with vision? So this tiny model with 7 billion parameter beats DALL-E 3 on images and beats Lava on image understanding, which is to me is like absolutely crazy. I don't know why people are not talking more about this. I don't know what use cases you would use this for necessarily. Like, why wouldn't you use like Flux, for example, for image generation? But yeah, it's pretty cool.
It would be interesting if you could input an image, have it changed by the AI and output as an image. That would be very cool. Image manipulation through the AI, through natural language.
Yeah, so that's like what Sora does, right? You upload a video in Sora and you like tell it like, hey, understand what's going on. I believe that somehow GPT-4, when it knows, like it can do this. Like we play with GPT-4, we uploaded Nissan, you uploaded capybaras and whatever, and different raccoons. I remember the raccoon on like skateboard was one example that you can upload and it understands the image and it generates. You can even transfer the understandings from the understanding into the generation. So this is Janus. DeepSeek kept releasing a bunch of stuff. This is Janus Pro. Janus 1.5B was the previous one. Janus Pro is the existing one. We also have NVIDIA Eagle 2. NVIDIA is, so DeepSeek, like one of the highlights of this is like the combined understanding, but compared to a specified model for vision, they're not competitive. Janus Pro is not competitive to something like Eagle or Qwen VL. So we had like just a array of multimodal models or vision models coming out. NVIDIA finally brought back Eagle 2, which they released last week and then yanked for some reason, and now it's back. Maybe they confused something. The model is there, paper is there, and the demo, you can play with the demo. It's a high-resolution multimodal understanding. Like, it understands 4K videos. This is, I think, one of the first, this is the highlight of this model, understanding 4K resolution video processing for OCR and object detection in the video. They have like a multi-expert architecture, long context support, 16K sequences for video analysis. Very interesting. Released in 3 sizes, 1B, 2B, and 9B, including the paper. And they claim they match 70 billion parameter competitors with this 9B. This is a shout out from the paper. Anything else? By the way, we have LDJ here. LDJ, welcome. Welcome to the stage, man. Have you looked at Eagle at all? What do you think about Eagle?
Eagle? I can hardly remember what was unique about it. So I guess I don't really have much to say.
Yeah, I think that the highest unique thing is like the very high quality processing videos that they do, and some efficiency in training, etc. Let's talk about.
It's still a Qwen model, by the way.
Is a Qwen fine-tune?
Yeah, it's still a Qwen fine-tune. They try to name the architecture themselves. It's like an eagle tube, but then you look down in the configs and it's a Qwen 2.5 7B.
Yeah. No, good. Nisten's comments is very interesting. Model tree now on Hugging Face. You can go and see the model tree, like which model was distilled from which version. And so this is on top of Qwen 2.57B. So maybe the vision encoder is theirs, Nisten? Because I don't think it's a Qwen vision.
The vision is a Google Siglet. So
yeah,
it's just another VLM, like many of them out there. I mean, it's probably pretty good. It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with it, but it's not all that different from Lava and all the other ones. Even some of the ones that Alan has made.
Yeah, that's true. They compare themselves to Qwen VL2, not 2.5, Qwen VL2, which came out a while ago, right? Yeah. So they compared themselves in 9 billion parameter model compared to Qwen VL2 7B and also 70B. It's great. Shout out to NVIDIA. They have the vision is Siglip from Google and ConvNet as well. But the more interesting model, I think, came out, which is, I think, state of the art. Qwen 2.5 VL came out. And Qwen 2 VL was state of the art. And just a second before the Chinese New Year, our friends at Qwen gave us Qwen 2.5 VL, which they call the flagship version of Qwen. It's really hard to now get to a point where we know what's state of the art in vision models. This feels state of the art-ish. And there's a few highlights there that I want to chat about specifically. One of them, Nisten, I think you called out. It's good for agentic purposes. You want to chat about this? I think you called this out.
Yeah, I think it was VB or someone that demoed this, and I'm in the process of integrating their 1 million thing. I wasn't doing anything agentic, but it's basically like an open source operator. You're going to build it with this.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be, this model is going to be a much bigger deal than what it seems right now. We had some other ones from GLM, but they're not as well known and people haven't built as much with them. Also, sometimes there were difficulties with them on running them on Llama CPP.
Yeah, the quantized versions of those did not work. And they even put up a notification on GitHub that like quantization versions just completely fail the computer use angle.
Yeah, you're probably going to need the large one, the 72B, to actually have it reliably do work. But yeah, I think in the coming days or weeks, this model is going to be a much bigger deal if you want to have here an operator, because it seems like this is the best one right now. Mainly because you don't have to have two separate models, one to recognize what's on the screen and also decide. The same model can do both pretty well and output the code.
For me in Qwen VL 2.5, Qwen VL 2 was like already a great model. From you probably like already, you also looked at some of the state-of-the-art updates. The highlights for me is like object grounding. They now can show you like which objects are where. I think that's significantly improved, including like specific places and labels and positions. They output them in like JSON stuff, and they can understand what each one is. They also have a bunch of world information in there. They showcase the pyramids, etc., and they show like different types of birds, understanding. But the highlights, and they have the standard like benchmarks. They compared themselves to Gemini 2 Flash, by the way, which is a very good vision model, and they claim higher stats than Gemini 2 Flash with this model. Flash is probably going to be significantly faster and cheaper though, because this is a big model, 2 billion parameter. Flash is probably going to run faster, but they like on OCR bench, they're beating Flash, and they're like on etc. However, the most important stats for this model to me is video understanding. This model has temporal video understanding. So not only sequence by sequence images that they just send to the model, okay, this is video. No, this model understands temporality in videos, which we talk about all the time, which is very important for actual video understanding. So this understands like high quality video as well, similar to Eagle. And this is important also for agents as well. So this model is, like we said, agentic. This model is going to be like a good plugin to something like a open operator or like browser use, probably, because not only does it like it's already trained in agentic visual agent purposes. It also understands video. All visual agents right now, they're operating based on screenshots only. The operator from OpenAI we're going to talk about, they're operating on screenshots only. This one understands video for up to an hour. So if that kind of turns into a real-time understanding thing, this agent is just going to be better because you can see progression.
And Qwen announced, or at least there were talks about a Qwen agent coming out. So I think that is an integral part for that.
Yep. So
they've had that in the repository for quite some time, and before people give a shit for promoting the CCP or whatever, I think it should be a bit more grateful for people just open sourcing work to get stuff done, because that just benefits everyone. And the reason people are using this model is because all agents suck. These tools are just barely adequate to begin with. So just using the best one, you're using the best tool for the job, which just happens to be this open source one that like fulfills the requirements of you owning the information instead of renting it. So if you have that as a business requirement, that your business has to own the information, you're going to use the Chinese model, bro, because everything else sucks. And even the Chinese model is just barely adequate enough to do the job.
Yep.
And so just to let you know, if you don't want people to use Chinese models, open source better ones.
I will say though, Nistan is going hard against some imaginary people. I don't remember too many people for ThursdAI complaining about CCP
not on ThursdAI. I just mean like in politics.
But yeah, generally, once it breaks through the barrier of normies, then CCP shilling commences. Or sorry, the accusation of CCP shilling commences. Anything else that we want to add about Qwen 2.5 VL? Folks, Qwen releases the greatest vision models. Go get those models. Go play with them. You can play with them on the Qwen chat app that they have, the Qwen chat. And the thing that I wanted to talk about, so it's chat.qwenml.ai, I think.
There is something in them because they've put a limit on the input. It's only 10,000 characters. So that actually is very limiting. So you can't even paste a large amount of code. So maybe we could ask them to ease that off.
Yeah. So chat.qwenlm.ai. And the one thing that I want to highlight in this chat.qwenlm.ai is that they now have image generation in there and video generation in there, and the videos look good. They look like Hauliok level, Sora level videos. They didn't talk about the video at all, and now you can generate videos with Qwen just through the chat though. So we started talking about Qwen 2.5 VL, which is like a state-of-the-art OSS vision model, and we then said that to try this, you can now test it from the drop down in Qwen, and then also while you try this, there's other two models there that are like for some reason hidden there for video generation as well. I think that this is it in vision and video. That's as far as we have. That's what we have to cover there in vision and video.
Also, they released 2 Apache license 1 million context models from Qwen.
Yeah,
which we're trying to have up on GitHub GG for people to use. They were very fast and very good. So expect some fine tunes on that. I think those kind of deserve their own thing because people don't really realize why they're useful, but that will be communicated as more projects.
So we covered this a little bit in last week, but let's talk about this as well. Qwen, before this time, Qwen had a Qwen Turbo, which is 1 million context window that they support from their portal. But now they also released the models as well. This was last week. We covered this. I think it was like literally on Thursday that they came out.
Apache license. You can now fine tune an Apache licensed 1 million context model.
I think that's incredible.
Big deal.
You remember we talked about the difference between like 4K and 8K, and we're like, yeah, 8K context. 1 million is a big deal. Absolutely. All right, folks, we've been at this for more than an hour. Let's do a little reset on the space. If you're joining now, you are on ThursdAI, which is a weekly AI news show that we bring to you for the past almost 2 years now. We cover everything. Sometimes we cover live breaking news. For example, last week we talked about Operator from OpenAI, which we're going to mention today as well. Live as they launched it, we watched it together with you, and then we used it and tested it out. So my name is Alex Volkov. I'm here as an AI evangelist from Weights and Biases. Weights and Biases also co-hosts the show with us. So if you're in the Twitter space with us, this is the square button with the golden check mark on X. Please give it a follow as well. We also are on video, also hosted by Weights and Biases with this time. So if you want to not only listen to us, but also see the stuff that we're showing, sometimes for like vision models, etc., it's nicer to just see. So feel free to go and check out that. We're live streaming everywhere on YouTube, on LinkedIn. There's 5 people on LinkedIn that always join, and this is their preferred medium, which is great. Hey, LinkedIn folks. Together with me, I have my co-host here, Wolf from Raven Wolf, all the way from Germany, Nistan, all the way from cold Toronto in Canada, and LDJ in somewhere in the eastern, southern part of the United States, also joining us as well. We usually do a reset in the middle of the show, and as always, the show is not sponsored by sponsors, so everything we talk about, like Qwen, we're not shilling CCP, they're not paying us. The only sponsor-ish that we have is Weights and Biases. And so usually in the middle of the show, we do a short corner, sometimes that's called This Week's Buzz, where I give my co-host a 5-minute break, and I talk about Weights and Biases related things. So let's do this super quick right now, and then we'll be back and talk about what else happened in the world of AI, including agents, including big companies and API, and including voice and audio. There's a bunch of updates in voice and audio. So let's do This Week's Buzz. Hello, welcome back. This is This Week's Buzz, the corner in ThursdAI. I talk about everything that happens in the world of, which is quite a lot. So this week, I was waiting for breaking news to actually bring some more examples of the stuff that we worked on, but breaking news did not come. Breaking news from OpenAI did not come. They're probably waiting on it. So if there's going to be some breaking news, we're going to talk to you about them. However, this week, I want to tell you that, just a reminder, last week, we mentioned a state-of-the-art result that came from Weights and Biases. In Weights and Biases, we have 2 main products that we do. We have the ML observability framework, ML experimentation framework called Weights and Biases models that most of machine learning engineers in the world use, including companies like OpenAI, including companies like Microsoft, Mistral, I believe as well, like a bunch of companies. We also have a new tool for the AI engineers. It's called Weave for LLM observability and evaluation. And I talk about this quite a lot. So if you follow the show, you probably know all about Weave and evaluation. In kind of order to promote it better, we are becoming experts in the world of evals specifically. So if you want to test one of those models that we talk about and drop this in a replacement for your production application, and you want to test out the differences, whether or not production application still works with the new R1, for example, how would you know? The only way to know is evaluation. So we release content continuously about evaluation. We have a course for free. And last week, we actually are dogfooding our own products to know how they do better. And in the process of dogfooding, we achieved state-of-the-art results in SWE Bench Verified, which is a very hard benchmark for software engineering tasks. We are now #1 in the world on that benchmark with 65.1%. And Sean Lewis, who is the CTO for Weights and Biases, he built this with a agent framework he called WMB Programmer that we're likely to open source at some point. And he went on Latent Space podcast with Swix and Alessio, our friends as well, to talk about how he did this. And so one of the things that happened with This Week's Buzz is that Sean's interview with them is very interesting, and you guys should definitely tune into that. I'll add this in the show notes as well. Other 2 things that I want to shout out is that there's going to be a few events that are coming up. And I love talking about events in ThursdAI because then people who listen to the show, they come to those events. When they come to those events, they say hi to me and they give me a high five, and I always love this. One of the main events of the year for AI engineers is AI.engineer, also run by Swix. And I've been at pretty much every event since then. We're going to sponsor that one. I'm going to be there together with all my colleagues. If you're coming to AI Engineer Summit in New York in February 20th, 21 and 22, we're going to be there. Come by our booth, say hi to us, check out some cool stuff. Probably the chef is going to make an appearance. There's going to be a bunch of very cool things from us, probably a talk from us about evaluation. So definitely, if you're an AI engineer, we're going to see you there. I'm going to probably do a ThursdAI episode live from New York, not Saturday night, Thursday morning. And it's going to be live from AI Engineer as well. Probably going to do some interviews. So if you're into that, we'll see you there soon. And a few days afterwards, I'm flying to very cold Canada to meet my friend Nistan for the first time after 2 years running the show together, because we're coming to Tinkerers in Toronto, which is becoming bigger than New York. The Tinkerer diaspora in Toronto is huge. Their upcoming event has 150 seats and more than 700 people subscribe to that event. So it's like way oversubscribed. And so we're coming to Toronto, to University of Toronto, to do some workshops about evaluation. So if you're listening to this and you're from Toronto, or if you want to have an excuse to fly down to Toronto in the middle of February, for some reason, I don't know, you got tired of the palm trees and you want to come and learn about evaluation, we're going to run 2 workshops. The same thing we did in Seattle, in Toronto. Tune in for those. I'm going to add links probably next week because we don't have the links quite up yet, but it's coming. So AI engineer in February, and then 2 workshops in Toronto in February as well. I think those are the highlights. We have a bunch of other features that we're going to launch. I'm going to talk to you about features, but the main thing is, folks, if you're not doing evaluations on your AI applications in production, you're not able to confidently drop in R1, for example, and just see if your application is better. And this is what we're here for. If you're interested in anything more than this, just click on the weights and biases link in the show notes, or just go to 1b.me/weave and then get started with a few lines of code. It's very simple. 1b.me/weave. This is our evaluation and observability framework that sponsors the show and makes it happen. So if you're enjoying any parts of the show, and with this, folks, this was this week's Buzz. Let's get back to our regular programming. Alrighty, back to our regular programming, and we now have the next section that we talk about. It's a new section. It's called agents. We haven't talked about agents. I don't have an opener for agents, but folks, 2025 is a year of agents. It's clear. We've talked already with Joao from Crew AI. We've talked with Graham Newbig from All Hands and Open Devon, previously Open Devon, and now Open Hands. And last week we talked about Operator that came out as a first agent from OpenAI. It came out a week ago. It's only for the pro tier, so you have to shell out $200 for the privilege to use this. And I think the corner for agents is going to be a very interesting one, maybe growing and growing on ThursdAI. And so we should talk about some stuff that happened in the world of agents this week. So first of all, in the world of open source agents, Blocks, the company that's run by Jack Dorsey, previously from X and Blue Sky, etc., they released an open source agent called Goose. And you can run this, I think, on Mac OS. Not sure if on Windows as well. And this is a open source agent framework that's running agents that control your computer. Very similar to Open Interpreter, by the way. Very similar to like how Open Interpreter works. The thing that they have is a very nice package. I don't know, DJ Wolfram, have you had a chance to already try out Goose, or folks in the audience as well? Feel free to let us know how Goose worked for you. I ran this on my machine, and with some success, I would say, some amount of success, but not great. For some reason, so I'll give you one example of not great. It runs on your machine, so it like uses your keyboard and your apps, etc. And it uses shortcuts. So I asked it to go and fetch me some information from WhatsApp app. It went there, it opened the WhatsApp app, and then it tried to delete one of the chats. And so I literally got like a WhatsApp app. Hey, are you sure you want to delete this chat with this person? I was like, no, that's exactly what I don't want. So yeah, so agents are still, let's say local agents are still, they can run into issues. The highlight there for me is the extension feature. You can build extensions and they're built with MCP, Anthropic's computer protocol for connecting agents one to another. So they already have extensions like, let me see which extension they have. They have a memory extension. They have a Git extension that can read Git statuses from directories you're in. They have obviously a computer control extension that does web scraping and file and automations and knowledge graph memory. And then they have a web search extension as well, and a very interesting Figma extension. So if you're into trying out different like agents, this is a very interesting, fairly neatly packaged open source from Blocks, which I'm assuming the better the like Nissan said, the better the underlying models will happen, like the Qwen VL agent, for example, the better these type of like agent runners are going to be, and the more important they're going to be.
Which one did you use when you tried to delete your chat on WhatsApp?
I think that Llama tried to delete my chat. I tried DeepSeek, and for some reason, DeepSeek did not work. So I tried DeepSeek on Grok and then DeepSeek on OpenRouter. For some reason, I think because of the way reasoning tokens are shoved in there, that just didn't work with me on Goose. I mean, we can try Goose right now. If I can show you guys, for those who are watching, if you want to switch. So you can switch between different models, GPT-4o Mini, for example. Once O3 Mini comes out, then you can do that. And then you can choose, let's choose a different model. Let's do Claude. Claude's supposed to be good, right? Anthropic. Claude Sonnet latest. Let's try Claude Sonnet latest. Okay, so we switch to Claude. And then let's do Claude Sonnet latest. Open Chrome and go to x.com.
For computer use, cloud computer use, they made a specific model with a specific name that is different from the normal Sonnet.
Yes.
If we could use that here, that would be interesting.
So it's not that one. I don't know if that one is available necessarily. I think it is, but I don't know. Do you guys remember if that is available via API specifically, that model? The computer use model?
Must be, because it's being used by the API of that thing. So we should just get the name of the model and try if we can insert it here. I think that could be an interesting experiment.
Yep. So yeah, we should probably just add this to the API. So I just asked it to go to Chrome and open, and it opened Chrome and went to x.com. And it did this with the script, with just Apple script. So it does like a bunch of Apple script stuff. But I would be very cautious to telling people to use this. I didn't yet see the benefit in this. My benchmark for running agents is this. I have a very standard, like running for the past year and a half preparation flow for ThursdAI. I follow all the news on X like most of us do, and I add them to a bookmarks folder on X that's called ThursdAI bookmarks. And then Wednesday before, a couple of days before, I start collecting my bookmarks into the notes that you guys sometimes see on the screen. I'm looking for an agent to automate that part. I have the bookmarks. I know the process to go to x.com, go to the bookmarks folder, get them, etc., and then do some connection to get the link inside there, do a summary, etc. None of the agents that I'm able to run is able to do this for me. And this is my benchmark for an agent that can help. That's not to mean to replace me, because I'm still the person who decides which news ends up on the show. It's just like the literal slog of going to x.com, going to bookmarks, opening this like a new tab, doing a summary, putting it in my notes, putting it in the right section in the notes, right? We have the open section, we have the company's APIs. That thing is my benchmark for whether agents are here or not. None of the agents, like Goose, cannot even come close to do this. Operator, from the other side, is another agent that OpenAI just launched. And for folks who do pay $100 for OpenAI, I have built an Electron wrapper for Operator, which I will hopefully be able to show you in a second. I have this Operator app that I built. So basically it wraps the Operator website, but gives you a native notification on macOS. So if you are paying $200 and you're playing with Operator, you can download this on my GitHub. I'll add the show notes. And I've been running Operator for the past week. And I tried the same exact task. I've tried to have it go to bookmarks, get each link, get a summary, and it failed with so much fanfare. It's better than Goose, but it failed with so much fanfare. It only extracted 3 links. Didn't really work for me, which is unfortunate. But it's trying. It's working way better than Goose. And the beautiful thing about Operator, you can run multiples of them in the background. You can ask Operator for something like, hey, tweet about our live show. And you can tell Operator to do something like this, and then it will know how to do some stuff. So it's very interesting. Have you folks tried any of the agent runner thingies that we just covered? Goose or Operator? Folks here with me on stage or folks in the audience?
Not yet, but it should be working on Windows if you use a command line version in WSL, for example.
Yeah. You mean the Goose one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the benefit there is that Goose is open source and runs, so even in Europe, Operator is not available in Europe. There was also another company that also claimed state-of-the-art Operator-like things, and I tried that, and it like absolutely completely failed. So that also didn't work for me as well. So we're waiting for agents. 2025 is the year of agents, but right now we're still waiting for some of those results.
H-Runner?
Not H-Runner. Another company.
Hive or something. There was a French one too.
Yeah, I think also French. But yeah, we need better. I didn't even add this to my notes, I think, this time. So yeah, another agent that runs. I will add this to the show notes. There's also an open source version that tries to get to Operator level. It's called browser use. So folks, if you're interested in taking a look, browser use public on It's very similar to Open Interpreter, actually. Browser use is public on, and they also have computer use from browser use as well. So if you don't want to pay Open and get their state-of-the-art models, they're state-of-the-art. Open Operator model understands a few things incredibly well. Like it can join a space, for example. It's really not completing my task yet, but it's probably the closest one to complete my task. It was able to go to the bookmarks folder. It was able to pull out, I can show you guys some examples. It was able to pull out the tweets to put them in a new entry. You can see here on the screen, you can see how many tabs are opened. So it's really funny. Like they have a Chrome browser running in there and they open a bunch of tabs. It was not just very good at getting summarization, but it did open those tabs, take those links and put them in a new entry example for me, including getting the links out of those. So pretty cool. I do it faster right now, but obviously that's not a good measure of agents if I do something faster.
What's cool about agents, when you have a good agent, you can send it to the OpenAI providers, to the AI providers like Claude or OpenAI and so on. And then the agent can use those and pick the best one for the use case you have. That would be interesting on a meta level in that way.
So a very interesting thing is that if you go and you ask operator, go to operator.chatgpt.com to do an inception, say, hey, agent, launch an agent. It goes there, and the error they have is, it's very funny. They have an error that says, nope, don't even try. Nice try, but no, just no. This is literally the kind of site unavailable. Nice try, but no. They know that people will try this. So agents corner, I think that this is pretty much it. We'll add the runner that we had. It also failed for me. It also didn't work.
You know what's messed up now? That we're going to need the AI calling on humans to just solve the CAPTCHA so that it could go by. We spent all this time making CAPTCHAs so that we know it's a human using the tool, and now we have to reverse that.
It's really funny. You can jailbreak operator to solve captures for you. It absolutely can do that, but it doesn't want to. And Nista, I think you're referring to the fact that you're getting a notification that says, go and solve this capture for me, human, and then I'll continue. It really is funny. And so I think the highlight in operator is that when you start different tasks, you have all these integrations, OpenTable, StubHub. They don't have direct API integrations into those. Operator only works on pixel level, but they have those integrations, assumably because they work with these companies to say, hey, if our agent runs, then at least don't show captures for our agent, because it's like really annoying. So going to Reddit and go to Reddit, let's try this. Go to Reddit and show me the top 2 posts. I believe that it won't go to Reddit. Like I believe that Reddit already blocks something like operator. So yeah, those examples of asking the human to intervene and actually, yep, there you go. So Reddit blocks the operator stuff. They want you to log in. And then operator is actually very good. The operator sends you a notification and says, hey, log into the browser. And so you can actually do this in the operator. Their Chrome web runs on like a cloud somewhere. You can store your credentials. And so if you store your credentials, then it should work. It looks like you. They don't have a custom user agent as well. So you can take over and you can log in, and then you're able to use the services that you want. I think the operator right now is definitely state of the art. It's the closest that came to being able to do my task. It doesn't do it well. Great promise, but still not there. But playing around with this, it's probably worth the $200 for the folks like us who want to try different things. I don't know if it's worth for a regular human to pay $200 for agents.
Look, as someone who's always very critical of agents, it's not because I don't think they're real or they're not going to happen. It's just that they're not really doing anything automated. And I just think it's going to be a lot harder. But remember when OpenAI GPT-4 came out with function calling, and we were debating whether this is a game changer. And then they released all the plugins, and the plugins did not have any product market fit. So then that kind of died down because it wasn't really helping stuff automate. And now every model is required to have function calling ability. Otherwise it's useless. It's just not as useful. I think this will become a much bigger deal. I just think that the difficulty to actually implement an assembly line that consistently works is a lot higher than what people are imagining or just getting a dopamine rush about. It's, again, the analogy here is you can watch someone cook pasta at home And then you want to build like a pasta maker factory? No, that looks like an oil refinery from the outside. That's a very complex thing. So it will take some time before these things actually get to a point, and it's going to be a lot more work because there's just an endless amount of edge cases to get through.
I see Simon as well with us here in the audience. Feel free to come up and tell us about your experience with Operator. Right now, as Nissan, you were talking, I asked Operator to go and play Paint by Numbers, Color by Numbers, the children games. I found it very endearing. Right now, the folks who are seeing us on video can see that it loads the game. The main issues is it doesn't support WebGL. The browser the Operator runs doesn't support WebGL, and most of these games, for some reason, WebGL, well, you can use Canvas, whatever. Let's add Simon Wilson, our friend. Simon will join us, and I want to hear your experience with agents generally, but also Operator if you have a chance to play with it.
Yeah, I've been unimpressed so far. The best results I had from it is I asked it to figure out which BART station was closest to a specific address, and it fired up Google Maps and it measured the driving distances and gave me the correct answer. And what was great about that is that the only time I've used Operator where it hasn't just constantly stopped to ask me for permission to keep on going. If you give it a read-only task, it can actually go and churn away. And it ran for about 2.5 minutes, but I was doing other stuff, and then I got a notification that it was finished. So that was quite good. The other things I've played with it, it's just because it just has to keep on asking you for permission to do this and do that and so forth. It feels like a tech demo. It's, okay, I see what they're trying to do here. This is not actually saving me any time yet. Yep. It's an interesting start. It's definitely not worth paying $200 a month for. But yeah, it's been fun to play around with. But I don't know. I remain skeptical about the whole idea of what Operator's trying to do because of the security concerns around it. I've got a screenshot where somebody did send it to a meme generator, and on the meme generator page was a little bit of text that looked like a prompt injection, and Operator just stopped, and it showed a big thing at the top saying, hey, there's something on this that looks like instructions. Are you sure you want me to continue? Which I guess at that particular time that the filter kicks in and works, but I don't know if I'd trust most human beings to understand what the hell that even means. So yeah, I remain skeptical about it for the moment.
What's your kind of go-to task to test this out for that you would say, okay, if this passes this task, like agents are helpful?
So I haven't done the testing yet, but one that I've been holding in my head is I want to buy a battery for my house, right? Like one of those big backup batteries, which you plug in, and then if there's a power outage, you can plug other stuff into it. And for that, if you want to do comparison shopping for that, you have to go to 15 different websites of different manufacturers and gather information from all of those. And so something I've been trying, I tried this with deep research, and I played with ChatGPT search in the past, like trying to get a really comprehensive view of all of the things in this particular category of product, and then give me a comparison table and help me understand which one gives you the most kilowatt hours or whatever it is. That feels to me like that's going to be the moment for me. It's when I can send out one of these research agents. I like research agents because they don't need access to my bank account. They feel like a much more sort of safe application of this. But when I can send them out and get such a comprehensive overview that I don't feel like now I've got to go and do the work as well myself just to make sure, that's going to be big. And that, I think we might actually get there this year. I feel like the research agents thing, especially the Gemini deep research one, has been pretty impressive so far. So that I'm more optimistic about.
So that's a very interesting kind of like comparison as well, because sometimes for stuff like that, you may be better served with a search API integrated with like a DeepSeek, for example. We have like later in the show, we're going to talk about Perplexity adding DeepSeek R1 and then Exa also integrating something like deep research as well. So it's very interesting. Would you need an agent that runs and clicks on buttons in the browser to do that? Or will this be better served with an LLM with some API access, but it's also like an agentic to an extent?
Exactly. Like the Google Deep Research is just, it's using the Google Search API, the internal one directly, which is what I think you need for this kind of thing. The browser automation aspect is much less important for that sort of thing. Although I say that, I think at some point with research, you want vision involved. You want to be able to look at, and that's the point where that's like half of the value add of things like Operator is that they can do the vision things against a screenshot of the page. So it might be that you want a combination of that. You want the search API, but also the ability to load up actual web pages and actual browser and explore it that way as well. That combination would be really powerful. Isn't it weird that OpenAI haven't let O1 or O1 Pro access their search tool yet, or code interpreter?
For search tool, yes. I heard the trick today. You can go and enable web search in a 4.0 context and then switch to O1, and then it has access. I think even O1 Pro has access to search like that. I saw this trick and I was like, I wanted to mention this. But yeah, I think it's weird that it doesn't support
I need to try that.
But there's a trick to do this. LDJ, go ahead. You have your hand raised up as well. Give us some comments.
Yeah, I was just going to mention with Operator, I think it's worth noting they did actually say in the next few months they'll make it available to Plus users, so $20 per month users. And I think also people should keep in mind that the computer use paradigm, it is something that in a lot of ways is functionally verifiable, which means that it can have a lot of implications in the O1, O3 paradigm in the future, where they're integrating these types of tasks into the reinforcement learning. And I think we will see over this year in 2025 a lot of advancements similar to the O1 paradigm in specifically computer use capabilities.
Yep. I will just say that throughout all of this time, I asked my operator to go and play paint by numbers, and so far it found like 5 games, all of the WebGL. WebGL is not supported in that context, so it wasn't able to actually get to a game, but it keeps trying. It prompted me to ask me some questions, etc., but it keeps trying, so it's very interesting. Operator's model, they call QA, computer use agent. It runs longer times than the usual like other agents that I've seen. While absolutely, I'm Simon with you, it's not there. It feels like at least out of the ones that I've tried, at least the one that can run for the longest in computer use.
That's interesting. I mean, O1 Pro is the only model that solved the New York Times connections quiz for me. New York Times connections is such a good test of the reasoning agents. Yeah. It's like the perfect. And O1 Pro will churn away for 4 minutes, but it has got that quiz right almost every time I've tried it, which is quite impressive.
So we're not in the realm yet of also reasoning agents as well. We have the reasoning parts. O1 Pro does reasoning with steroids. We're going to get O3 Mini at some point. I was hoping for today, breaking news, but we didn't get it. And then we have agents that are doing like step by step, also like chain of thought things, but they're not necessarily combined together. But I think once we get there, for example, like reasoning agents that we did state of the art on Sweetbench, that was a reasoning agent, and that seems to work well.
It's also worth mentioning that the reasoning stuff, if you're worried about prompt injection, there was a paper just the other day where the reasoning agents do much better against prompt injection attacks because they can reason through them. They're not infallible, which is the problem, because if somebody's trying to hack you, catching 99% of the attempts isn't going to save you. But it's still, like, for the reasoning stuff, I think is going to make the browser automation things a whole lot more reliable.
Yep. Even though probably slower as well. Like even this one, operator is like not reasoning and it's very slow. You can see it. And I wish I'm clicking faster. Folks, we're moving to our last section for today. Last 2 sections for today.
Yeah, I think there is a whole market for security software to detect prompt injections and malicious code.
No, I hate everyone's trying to build that. I hate it because that will only give you a statistical chance. It'll say, oh, there's a 99% chance that this isn't a prompt injection, and that's where you get hacked because you've got adversarial attackers who will come up with that 1 in 100 attack that gets through your security filters. So I feel like those are all a bit of a red herring.
Yeah, maybe, but no protection isn't better.
Yeah, I will say just to pinpoint this, Simon, I think you mentioned OpenAI when they launched Operator. We didn't cover Operator on the show. We actually like Operator launched and we didn't have access to it. When they launched it, they said they have 3 levels malicious intent. The user can be misaligned, so the user can ask Operator to do some stuff that it doesn't want to, so it will say no to the user. The website can be misaligned, which is like Simon, what you're talking about, prompt injection from the website context. That they have built in some stuff that says Operator, hey user, the website is trying to fuck with you, so don't go take a look. And then also just what's the third one? User, website, and the LLM itself can be misaligned. So the LLM itself, the operator agent, can like do hallucinations and do some stuff that you don't want to. So they have now to deal with all these 3 levels. So it's going to be interesting how this unfolds. We're moving forward to our big companies and APIs generally a conversation, and we also have audio stuff, folks. So we have two other. Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
I dialed in early. Did you talk about Mistral Small 3 yet?
Yeah, we did in the open source section.
Yeah,
it's new and breaking news from us in the open source. We're moving now to like the latest corners of big companies and APIs. In the big companies and APIs is that DeepSeek's API is down. So it's really, first of all, I cannot go to the DeepSeek's platform website to get my API key anymore. I think that they closed it off to non-Chinese people, I believe. I know registrations are out, so you can only register with a Chinese phone number. And the DeepSeek API through OpenRouter that I still can access is very slow. They claim to be under attack. I don't know if folks can access it as well. I just wanted to.
They're going to have to change their policy because they were boasting, 2 weeks ago, they were boasting they don't have rate limits on their API. And I saw people who were doing 500 parallel requests against the API and it was working just fine. I think that's probably over. I think they might have rate limits from now on.
Most likely. And then many people are trying to get reasoning traces out of DeepSeek because OpenAI doesn't provide them. So that's going to be very interesting.
The official API, I just did a test right now. It's working, but it's not working all the time. So if I repeat it a couple of times, either it's a rate limit or just, too much.
So rate limits and also like slower. I noticed an OpenRouter shows you throughput. So you can see all of these APIs, you can see throughput. DeepSeek's was very high. Like DeepSeek's official API was fast. And it's not fast anymore. It's like when it does work, it's not fast anymore. I want to cover super quickly 2.5 Max because we launched another model that's not open source. But it's a great model that they gave us like just a second before the Chinese New Year. And that model competes with DeepSeek V3, which is another DeepSeek model. It's funny that this week people are discovering DeepSeek and they still only know about DeepSeek like the reasoning model. They don't know that DeepSeek already released a great model called V3. They don't know about like other DeepSeek ones. Qwen 2.5 Max is the kind of the flagship model from Qwen with impressive numbers. Like they compare themselves, let's say, to the previous Qwen 2.5B. It's not a model that's open source. So when we talk about Qwen, it's very important to differentiate. This is not a model that they released publicly. This is an API only offering from 2.5 Max. It does 69% on MMLU Pro, which is a very high number compared to, let's say, DeepSeek does 64, for example. Llama 405B does 61. So like a very good model. Human Evil at 73, also state of the art among those models. They also compare themselves to GPT-4o and other things on Arena Hard. They get the highest score as well. Very impressive model. This is a mixture of experts model that runs on their servers trained with massive data, and it requires an API key for access. I think pricing-wise, it's also fairly competitive as well. So
very competitive. 2 hours ago, they dropped the price. For Qwen 2.5 Max, 2 hours ago, it's now at $1.60 for a million tokens input, $6.40 for a million output. I've not compared that with the other similar models because I haven't quite figured out which models are similar, but I think that's dirt cheap.
Yeah, it's very cheap. And also, they're boasting one of the only APIs outside of Google that support 1 million contacts, which is also very important for folks. But I doubt that this is competitive with Google at all. Google's like millions of contacts at very dirt cheap prices. Simon, we talked about how you can run your whole library of images through Google's like Gemini understanding, and it costs like $8 for like your whole life of pictures pretty much.
It's ludicrous how cheap the Gemini Flash models are, yeah.
So it's really hard to compete with them. But shout out to Qwen for this release, absolutely. We should remember that like when folks are in different countries, they may don't want to use Google or they want to use something else. So it's a great model. The one highlight there is, in addition to this, I discovered that the web interface through which you can try Qwen 2.5 Max, which is the chat interface, also has video capabilities, video generation capabilities. So Qwen now has a video model they didn't tell us about. They no examples, just videos. It stopped working for me as well. I hope they fixed it, but definitely I saw some generations and they look very good. So to our friends who do video generations, try out the Qwen video one if that works for you. It takes a little while, but the examples there are very good. So I'm very surprised that we should bring Jun Yang after the New Year's break and interrogate him about, hey, how come you're releasing video models without telling the world like what's going on? So Qwen video model and image model as well. Also in big company and APIs, like the next thing I wanted to talk about is Zuck's earning call statements about Llama. I don't know if you guys saw these already. I posted like a tweet about this. It came yesterday in the Meta earnings call. Meta, the company, was rebranded to Meta because of Metaverse. And it looks more and more like the Metaverse is taking the back seat while AI is taking the front seat, because Zuck talks more and more about the insane amount of capex they're going to invest in infrastructure. They famously talked about, while people were covering project Stargate, and we covered this last week, Zuck and the Meta folks talked about their data centers that they're going to bring online as well. And they literally overlaid the size of the data center on top of Manhattan. And there's like this famous image from the next data centers they're going to build are Manhattan-sized data centers. So just like the whole Manhattan Island data center worth. So that's crazy. He talked about tens of billions of dollars in operation in CapEx expenditure on data centers and infrastructure. But also, Zach talked about Llama 4. And I want to bring to here like some of the mentions of what Zach said about Llama 4. Here's the quote. Llama 4 is making great progress in training. Obviously, they know about DeepSeek because there's this blind post from Meta that like they're in shambles. He didn't seem as scared by it in the earnings call, but obviously he needs to show off for investors like they got this. But here's the quote. Is making great progress in training. Mini is done with pre-training, and the reasoning models and larger models are looking good too. So a few things here. First of all, they used to release Llama and just mention Llama in different sizes. Now they have a different categorization for Llama Mini, Llama 4 Mini, which is interesting. It's done with pre-training, so they're going to release a few separate ones. But also they confirmed they have a reasoning model from Meta now. That's a new confirmation that we haven't heard before. We assumed that they will have one. From now on, we assume that every foundational lab will have a reasoning model because test time compute is not a scaling law you want to ignore. But it's great to have confirmation from the big Zach himself. And they have larger models as well. He also continues to say, our goal with Llama 3 was to make open source competitive with closed models. And our goal with Llama 4 is to lead. Llama 4 will be natively multimodal. It's an omni model and will have agentic capabilities. So it's going to be novel and it's going to unlock a lot of new use cases. So it seems like Zach just threw the kitchen sink of buzzwords about AI into this like statement, but omni models is definitely something we're waiting for. R1 is text only. It's text only reasoning. We are waiting for multimodal reasoners and we haven't seen any. With the exception of Qwen VL reasoning attempt that they did, right? There was one model super quick. We haven't seen native reasoners. We know the Gemini thinking. Simon, I think you had some comments on this as well.
I was just going to say, is Gemini thinking?
We know it's multimodal, so it can accept images, but we don't know if it's omnimodal. So we don't know if it's vision examples for Gemini and then they feed this via text. I haven't gotten the confirmation. Gemini 2 Flash is omni. They talked about this. So Gemini 2 Flash can like natively output sound. It can even draw images. They haven't released this, but they talked about this publicly.
I've seen a preview of that. Like the Google AI Studio has a preview of it.
But that's not the reasoning model. That's the Gemini 2 Flash model. So we don't know if we still have reasoning multimodal models, and probably they're coming, and Zach just confirmed that theirs is going to be.
It sounds a bit like the Qwen 2.5 VL that we talked about before, the 70B. With the capabilities.
So that one has agentic capabilities. At some point, Qwen released a version of theirs of reasoning with vision. Yeah, so that one, but I don't believe
QVL, that was it.
QVQ, yes, QVQ. So Quill, but like with visioning encoder on top. What else the last thing that I wanted to mention is that Zach continues to say that glasses are the perfect form factor for AI and that Meta Ray-Bans is a significantly well-received device. I have ones here. I didn't put them on because it screws up with the Bluetooth and then you guys can hear me through the headphones. I love these. I love my Meta Ray-Bans, absolutely love them. I love the AI integration. I wish that there was more memory. I wish that I could access reasoning models in there. I absolutely agree that this could be a thing here. This could be a breakaway category that we can walk around with glasses and then they will have AI on them. I think that's it on Llama, on Meta Llama. That's the update. We didn't get the models. We don't know the timelines, but we know it's coming. And then Llama 4 is going to have a mini model and it's going to come. It's finished pre-training as well.
I'm especially curious about the licensing because their multimodal stuff hasn't been available to Europe before. So so I hope they are going fully open again now, because otherwise Europeans just have the Qwen stuff or Chinese stuff. That would be pretty limiting them.
That's true. So I have this here, and OpenAI was supposed to launch O3 Mini according to some leaks from Bind already and from Theo. They didn't launch O3 Mini yet, so we may still get O3 Mini today, but for now, so far, O3 Mini was not launched, but it looks like it's coming pretty much undeniably either today or tomorrow, like very soon. So let's move to voice and audio. I think that this is a very interesting one. Voice and audio. There's an update here. So first of all, let's talk about UA. US7B, Wolfram, if you can pull up an example so that you can play, because for me it's a little harder to play with like audio. US7B is a music generation model that's open source. And we have breaking news, folks, from this model, because when I did the notes today, the model was CC by NC. So you cannot use this commercially. They changed the license right now. So literally like breaking news an hour ago. The license is Apache 2 now. So not only is this model competing with SUNO and Udio and like all of these in the open source, it's a 7 billion parameter model. It's also now Apache 2 license. So that's great. We celebrate open source as much as possible. And we can play one quick example, I think. I think I can send you a link to that one.
Yeah, can you give me the link?
Yeah, let's see if
Open
I have a link for an
I
example.
used it before and it didn't generate the audio for me, but the sample they have it was very impressive.
Yeah, let me actually
Can-
play this here and see if this works.
I'ma keep it real, living out my dreams.
You guys hear this?
Yeah.
Make nights cry.
Yeah, I doubt that the space folks can hear this. I have a little bit of a technical thing. Wolfman, I'll send this to you. Let me send this. Hold on, folks. We're going to play you an example. I'll send this to you from XChat. 1 second, Wolfman. There you go. Yeah. So here's an example, folks. So again, this is US7B. It's an open source AI model for full song generation from HK University and multimodal art projection. It turns lyrics into vocal and instrumental tracks, and it works across languages and genres as well. So super, super cool. Full song generation, lyrics to music pipeline. They have a bunch of stuff. They have chain of thought reasoning in there for song construction, in context learning. They can mimic style from uploading audio references. So that's also super cool. So you can upload like your favorite music and then say, hey, I want something like this. And we're going to play you an example. The thing is, this model is, even though it's 7 billion parameter, it's slow. So it can run technically on a 4090 or H100s or A100s, but I was able to run this via FAL, and it took a while. It took, I don't know, like 900 seconds or so. But now it's Apache 2 license as well. So now you can use this for whatever you want, for commercial as well. And let's try to see if we can hear an example of this.
Okay, let's go.
I'ma keep it real, living out my dreams. With this mic and a deal. Late nights grinding, writing down his rhymes. Clock is ticking fast, can't afford to waste time. Haters gonna hate, but I brush it off. Turn the negativity into something strong. Mama waking hard, wanna make it a proud. Echoes of her prayers cutting through the crowd.
7 billion parameters just did whatever this is. It's crazy.
Amazing.
Like the words are coherent, the music is separate. This is, folks, we're getting there. We're getting like multiple things from open source. So I'm very impressed with this. So shout out to folks from UE. YUE is how you write this. Yep. We'll add this to the show notes so you guys can generate music as much as you want. Another example from the voice and audio is Refusion Fuzz. Refusion released, it's a competitor, like a commercial competitor to SUNO and Udio, and they just launched Fuzz today. And the highlight there is it's free. So SUNO and Udio now, they require money, etc. They have like advanced things. SUNO V4 is incredible. Some of the transitions here on the show are made with SUNO V4. Refusion Fuzz is a new one. I haven't been able to test out quite well openly, but it works. It works well. It's fast as well. And then it's now free. So you can try that one as well. I think that this is it in voice and audio. I think that's pretty much it. The one last thing that I want to mention in voice and audio, this is not from this week. Folks, I keep getting amazed by Julio's audio model. The one with the emotions one. If you guys remember, a couple of shows back, they launched it, and I talked about how emotional this is. Since then, last week, I also played you an example of Woody Allen that I cloned his voice in Julio's audio, and like it had emotions in it. I keep being amazed by, I think that they compete with 11 Labs on emotional sound. I think it's really good. Folks, I think we're going to chat about the last two things super quick, and we're going to finish the show. The last thing that I want to bring up is Perplexity with R1. So Simon was just here and he was talking about deep research. That's from Google. I think that's only if you pay Google for Gemini Pro. I don't believe that this is like free access. Perplexity is also only for Pro users. Perplexity added Perplexity with R1. They highlight the fact that this is like the model is in the US. So it's very funny that they like really highlight this in the model itself. So this is hosted in the US because people are still worried of sending their information to China. But let me see if I can pull this up, show Windows. Oh, yeah. Perplexity. Let me show you a Perplexity search. It's really good. I've been like making fun of Perplexity a little bit because they renewed my thing. You have to go on the little drop down where it says Pro and then say Pro with R1. But then it is really good. I asked it, for example, what was the last episode of ThursdAI about? And it gave me the right examples for the first time ever in Perplexity. What was the last episode of ThursdAI news about? It shows you all the reasoning as well. So they implemented the reasoning. Hopefully this is going to replicate now in the example. An additional tool that I want to show you is XAI, which is a search API for agents. They basically did the same thing, and that one is free. So if you don't have Perplexity, if you go to demo.exa.ai/DeepSeek chat, they also integrated a similar thing as well. So we can go and take this and see, and then paste it here and do a small comparison. So back to Perplexity super quick. This is the result. The most recent episode of ThursdAI News, released on January 23rd, covered groundbreaking developments in AI, including major open source, DeepSeek R1, $500 billion infrastructure bill, NVIDIA desktop supercomputer. That wasn't from last week's show. That was the 2 weeks before. So not perfect, but OpenAI operator.
One looks very good right now.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And the EXA one is also really good. Also, pretty much did the summary. Last episode of ThursdAI was about major AI news, DeepSeek R1, operator agent, $500 billion project, ByteDance UI TARS, and updates on Google. So really great results. Yes. So what else do we have in the tools? The last tool that I'll cover is Crea AI. Our friends from Crea AI also had the DeepSeek. If you noticed, the 3 tools that we shout out, we don't usually shout out the tools, all integrated reasoning. And all of them now have reasoning in there, thanks to DeepSeek. So whoever didn't DeepSeek because it's Chinese origin can go and make a better model and show us what they have. Because right now you wouldn't be able to get this with one is going to be like too slow and too expensive for folks to run. All of these tools are now using reasoning because a Chinese lab, they used to be quants, and now they're like the most cracked team in AI, at least in China, gave us the reasoning tools for free. Go ahead.
Quick correction, Perplexity did have O1 reasoning in it, but it was limited to 10 users per day. So you could pick it, but you only had the 10 users. Yes. Yeah, they removed it now completely, and it's only R1. And interestingly, they even removed Grok and some other models. So now it's just GPT-4o, R1, and Claude on it. That is all they have right now, and their own model.
One last, I think so. This is, I think, the 3 tools that we have. Crea.ai is like a multimodal art generation thing. They also added like a DeepSeek generation as well. And I think that this is it, folks. I think that this is a show for today. I have some more folks sending us different things, like CMD instructions written by one in GGML and different things. So that's super cool. Agents are writing more code. But I think that we pretty much covered most of the important news, except one. O3 Mini did not launch.
Yeah, LDJ wanted to say something? Or
LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I think yesterday, me and Aaron, we put out this.
Yes, I wanted to cover this. Thank you. The last one. Let's talk about this. You and Aran Komosuzaki, the guy who posts about all of the releases and papers, you did some work. I want to hear from you, like what the effort was.
Indeed. Yeah. So I guess you're.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Do you have the link, or do you want me to send you the link right now?
I got it. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we were talking with various researchers. Spoke with. I wouldn't say we got like necessarily insider info. We would never do that. But yeah, there's like various things. For example, if you make some kind of baseline assumptions that I would say a majority of researchers that we spoke with agree with. For example, assuming that GPT-4o likely has at least similar dataset efficiency during training to Llama 3.1 405B, and various assumptions like that. And along with assuming certain MOE sparsity is likely happening in certain models and others, like you do end up quickly calculating things like Llama 3.145B, it's fully open source. We already know all the details. That one's very easy to calculate. That one we're super confident in.
So that's coming in at 50 million.
Yes, and to break down like what that cost actually means, like we saw a lot of the headlines of talking about DeepSeek costing $5 million. First, we wanted to address the people that feel like that's like a lie or something. Based on the way they're calculating, which is a fairly typical way of calculating training costs, that it does seem to be correct. And basically, the cost is really calculated as like essentially the market rate of H100s times the amount of H100s and the amount of hours you're running that training for. And that's basically, if you were to rent a cluster to basically train the specs of that model, that's how much it would cost you.
I have a question for you, though. They don't have access to H100s, correct?
Yes, correct. They don't have access to H100s, and the original GPT-4 here listed in the middle, it also didn't train on H100s. It only had access to A100s.
That's true.
And so for both of those things, conveniently with DeepSeek V3, it actually still ends up like a similar price as H800 because the ratio of it has less flops compared to an H100, but then it also costs less per hour than an H100, and roughly the amount of flops per dollar you get from the H800 when you optimize it to have similar flop efficiency ends up basically around the same flops per dollar. And then for GPT-4, it would have cost significantly more with A100. It's likely more like $100 million, somewhere around there, with the original 2022 training costs. But because of H100s now being significantly more cost efficient than A100s back then per flop, yeah, you end up with $30 million training costs there. And for O1 and GPT-4o, it seems very likely, based on various people working on RL and things like that I spoke to, that the cost is around becoming equal to the cost of the pre-training of the base model, pretty much. So that looks like something like maybe 10-15 million for GPT-4o and another 10-15 million for the RL that makes it O1. And then same thing for V3 and R1.
And then O3 as well, probably.
Yeah. And for DeepSeek R1, we actually don't have, there is no published cost of R1. They only publish cost estimates for V3. And so R1 is something we're extrapolating based on other analysis that we did.
So this $5.5 million that everybody keeps quoting, they didn't publish it?
So the $5.5 million, they did publish for the DeepSeek V3 model. That's the non-reasoning model.
Really? I thought like the 5.1, 5.5, like people attribute this to R1. Nistan?
It is what it is. They got H100s, bro. All the H100s are China on eBay. I don't think it matters that.
I want to draw a distinction,
and you still lost second place. So
I appreciate both attempts, but I want to draw a distinction. LDJ and Aran Konsulaki did exercise to try and estimate. There's a calculator that you guys built that we'll add to the show notes as well, that you can input the active parameter count and token counts and then choose which estimation of H100, B200. Nistan doesn't know whether or not DeepSeek has H100s or not, but he's he's estimating as well. But a different level.
No, I'm not estimating. I'm just saying that.
Speculating,
Yeah, they definitely have H100.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think maybe one of the most interesting things here too is, I don't know if you noticed the giant bar at the top, but
yes.
So that
for folks who are not watching, what is the giant bar?
The giant bar at the top, it's labeled upcoming 100K H100 scale models, and it's basically 10 times higher than all the other bars below it, like Llama 405B, Cloud 3.5 Sonnet, GPT-4, etc.
Which model is that? Grok 3?
Multiple models, actually. A lot of people asking things like, "Oh, where is GPT-5? GPT-5 is late," or blah blah blah.
Yeah, where is it?
Yeah. And to make a long story short, over the past 2-3 years, cluster sizes have been largely limited to around 24, 32K max GPUs. This is for many reasons due to fault tolerance mitigations you have to start implementing at larger scales and interconnect limitations. And a lot of these have just largely been worked around in the past few months. And so you have reports of Microsoft and OpenAI now training on 100K scale models in the past few months, as well as Grok 3, of course, that's publicly announced. And then now even Amazon is announced building 400K Trainium cluster for Anthropic, which is equivalent roughly 200K H100s. And Meta publicly announced over 100K H models coming soon as well. So you have many models all in this year, suddenly going to be around 10x scale or more than the frontier models of today. And I think that's really exciting.
Yep. And we're about to see whether or not this works out, with Grok supposedly already showing up for people in the chat, and then potentially they're going to also have a reasoning model as well. Thank you for this research, folks. We'll add this to the show notes as well, so you'd be able to see this incredible deep insights that you guys get on Thursday from the expert folks here on stage. With that, I think we're at the end of our show after 2 hours and 15 minutes. I wanted to shout out a few things. So first of all, thank you everybody for joining throughout wherever you join us, whether it's on Twitter Spaces, whether it's on YouTube, on LinkedIn. Hi, the 5 folks on LinkedIn who join. Tell other folks on LinkedIn that we should grow, but also folks who are just tuning in via the podcast. Thank you for tuning in from week to week. Hopefully this is helpful for you. If it is, there's a few ways you can support the show. One of them is if you're listening on any podcast like Apple Podcast, Spotify, give us a 5-star rating so that we'll get exposed to more people. If you're tuning in via the Substack, the forbidden Substack that you cannot mention on X. If you're doing and you're reading the breakdown of the news and the links, share that Substack with your friends as well. Leave us a comment on Substack. Let us know that you're reading this. Give us feedback about whether or not you want longer, shorter, etc. It takes a while to produce all this content, and it's very appreciated when somebody comments and says, hey, this was good, or even with a critic to help make it better for everybody else. That's also helpful. With that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, my co-hosts Wolfram, LDJ, Nisten, Simon Wilson joined us as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining and giving expertise. We estimate that the weeks don't stop. This week was crazy. The next one is probably going to be crazy as well. We waited for GPT-03 mini. We didn't get it, but probably maybe very soon. There's also some other things that we speculated we didn't get, like Gemini 2.0 Pro and other things. It looks like all of them are going to come out very, very soon because people are stressing out about DeepSeek. So with that, I want to tell you bye-bye, thank you, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, bye, and thanks.
Bye.